Then one night over dinner, Jesus said, "You don't talk about your job much." I didn't like to think about my job. Endless politics, gossipy, whiny, needy coworkers, bossy, unfair, hostile superiors. It was a paycheck, but that was all. Well, that's work. I like to keep it out of my home life. Well, I'd like to see you at work. What say I shadow you for a day? I could be like your intern. Ha! Or take your savior to work day. He liked that one. We decided to try it. Why not, I figured. Maybe he'd smite someone. The next day, I got dressed and headed into the family room where Jesus was waiting for me. He looked his usual gritty self. "Ready to go?" he asked. "Are you ready?" I replied. I was starting to rethink my offer. "This is who I am. It'll have to do." I drove. He may be the Lord of the universe, but I'm the queen of the car. I could feel his sideways glance on me every time I muttered at another car or a stoplight. "You get really angry when you drive," he offered as we pulled into the office parking lot. The day went as you might expect. People were a bit better behaved once they realized that Jesus was there with me. But all the usual dynamics were in place, except they were different. After a coworker dropped off some paperwork in my office, I turned to Jesus to vent. He thinks I'm stupid. I think he wishes I would quit. I didn't get that from him. This can be a stressful place. I think he's just stressed, like you are. Later, my boss stopped by for his daily delegation. I have to head out of town again, so I need you to finish this project for me. I rolled my eyes, but then Jesus spoke up. "Where are you headed?" Even my boss was surprised. "Well, that's none of your business, Jesus." That's what I wanted to say, and what I wanted my boss to say, but that's not what I heard next. My mom's been really sick. It's been going on for a while now. We don't know how much time she has left, and I'm the only one of the kids with any flexibility. My brother's in the military, and my sister lives across the country. "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. I thought it was Jesus speaking, but it turned out it was me." "Thanks. It's a lot of doctor meetings and paperwork. I'm her power of attorney now. And she's all alone except when one of us can get down to visit her." "Wow, we'll be praying for her and for you. That's a lot for a person to carry." That was Jesus. I was sure of it. Thanks," my boss replied, leaving in a hurry. I glared at Jesus. What was that about? "Your coworkers seem like good people with a lot on their plates, sort of like you." That shut me up for a minute. "You know," he continued, "you could be a lot more present to these people than you are. You could listen to their stories, get to know them. You might find that they're nicer than you think they are. They might even start being nicer than they think they are." He seemed to be getting worked up. "All the stuff you do all day, it's just subsistence. You're working to keep a roof over your head and food in your stomach and clothes on your back. I get that. I get why it's necessary. But subsistence isn't what you were made for. You were made for life, and life to the full." "Well, excuse me for living in the real world." My voice was rising. "I spend a third of my week in this place, half my waking life. Pardon me if I think it's a big deal when I get snubbed and overworked and underappreciated. And you're right. Being treated poorly is inexcusable." I wasn't expecting to win that one. "But you're treating other people poorly is equally inexcusable. And trust me, there are people worse off than you. Subsistence is much harder to come by for some people than for you." I had been waiting for this. This was the Jesus I had left behind when I grew up. Well, I get it now. You want me to go serve the poor somewhere, or become a nun or something. I'm not good enough for you, am I? Well, I don't need to go to Malaysia to prove I'm a good person. I am a good person. I was shouting. The gossipers were going to have a field day. "I'm not telling you to go to Malaysia. I'm not even asking you to prove you're a good person. I'm telling you to look at these people. You see them every day, but you never look at them. They're people. They deserve to be noticed." Jesus looked like he wanted to throw something. "I don't need you to become a nun. I want you to be a human being, and that means relating meaningfully, compassionately to other human beings. These people are desperate for that and don't even realize it. And you're desperate for it too. Can't you feel that?" do you know? I could feel it. Things at work changed after that. Turns out my boss is a pretty nice guy. So are a lot of my coworkers. They're not perfect, trust me, not by a long shot. But they're good people who need to be cut some slack every now and then. A few of us started getting together for lunch on Fridays. A few more of us started praying together. At first on the sly, since it seemed like a weird thing to do, but somebody caught us and soon everyone was talking about it. My boss asked me to keep it from being too disruptive, but gave us a green light to keep going. One night over dinner, Jesus asked me, "How are you feeling about your job these days?" I was surprised to hear myself tell Jesus that I didn't mind it, that somewhere along the way it had become less like time served and more like a team effort. Still, it wasn't the sort of job anybody dreams about as a kid. Well, keep paying attention to that. The time may come when you should do something different, and you shouldn't lock yourself into something you aren't called to, you know what I mean? I thought he was trying to mess with me. Seems like you're probably best off being wherever you are. Don't rock the boat if you don't want to get all wet, right? And yet I guess there could be circumstances where the world would be better off if a person would leave where they are and go somewhere else. In any case, Jesus didn't tell me to quit, he just told me to pay attention. I could at least do that, I figured. I tried teaching Jesus to drive. He didn't take to it. I can see why you get so tense in the car, he told me one day. "Thank you, Jesus," I said with a smile. He smiled back. "In your anger, do not sin." Not long after that, I came home from work to find Jesus looking through my old photo albums, pictures that hadn't made it onto my screensaver. I don't know how he found the albums. I had intentionally stowed them in the back of my storage closet. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Tell me about these people," he responded. I didn't want to. I'd spent a good amount of time trying to forget many of them, but I'd learned that Jesus always knows what he's asking. So I sat down next to him and we looked through the photographs together. Lots of them were guys. My cheeks burned as I remembered how I'd treated some of them, how careless we'd been with one another. Jesus seemed to know this was sensitive for me, and he was more interested in them as people than in what we'd done together. Pointing at one picture in particular, he said, "Him. Tell me about him." We were together for a while. I wasn't going to make this easy for him. It didn't work out. "He hurt you." It wasn't a question, it was a statement, almost a confession. "Yes, he did." "And these other people," he flipped back a few pages to some snapshots of friends and family. "They saw you being hurt and didn't do anything about it." That's right. I couldn't look at him or the pictures, I just looked at my hands. We were both quiet for a while. "Look, hiding these photos away doesn't mean you're over it all. I know. This pain has kept hurting you for years now, hasn't it?" "Yes." "I want to help you reconcile that pain." "How?" "I can't tell you how, but I know." He placed his hands gently on my shoulders and looked right into my eyes. He was crying too. "I know I can help you." Over the next several weeks, we talked a lot about this broken relationship, the sense of betrayal I had felt, the distance that had settled in between me and everyone in its wake, even between me and God. I didn't just talk to Jesus, though. At his suggestion, I talked with my family, old friends, even a therapist to sort through the impact of this one hurtful relationship on all the rest. To confess to them and myself the toll it had taken on me, to reestablish the intimacy that I had allowed to languish with my loved ones, and I would occasionally admit that they had allowed to languish with me. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the pain settled. I'm not saying the thought of it doesn't still hurt, because it does, but I found a place for that pain and I put it to rest. And Jesus has slowly filled the space it had been taken up with. True gifts, love, intimacy, wisdom, that sort of thing. One day I came home to find Jesus waiting at the door, holding the mail, one letter in particular. "We need to talk," he said. "Final notice," the envelope read. I'm not great at staying on top of things. I used to joke about it because people started expecting me to mess up. and being known as a screw-up made it easier to deal with the fallout. I could tell that Jesus wouldn't be rolling his eyes or laughing this off. This was serious. Look, you've been living by yourself for a long, long time. That's not true, Jesus. You've been living here with me. No, I've been staying here with you. I was surprised that his comment hurt. What's the difference, I wanted to ask, but I kept silent. He continued, you've been very polite and even friendly to me for the whole time I've been staying with you. You've listened to my suggestions, you've helped out when I've brought people over, you've let me help you with all sorts of things, but you still live alone. I was starting to get angry. You think I chose to be alone? This is how life goes. You grow up, people use you and cast you off, you scrape by, you do what you have to. I'm alone, I get it, but don't you have something to do with that? This conversation was long overdue. It's not good to be alone. That wasn't an answer, it was more like a decree. I know it's not good to be alone. I hate it. But you, I could barely talk. You made me this way. My whole life I've been walking in the dark, but aren't you the light of the world or something? If I'm alone, how is that not your fault? He didn't say anything. He just handed me the envelope. The return address was mine. I opened it to find a letter from him. I've been staying here with you for a while. I've loved my time with you, but things need to change. I felt my heart drop. Just like everyone else, Jesus was leaving. Keep reading, he said softly. You've been alone too long. It's not good for you to be alone. You can't manage this place by yourself. That was clear to me from before I even arrived. So here's my proposal. I'd like to live with you forever. I'd like to take up permanent residence here with you. What's yours will be mine, and what's mine will be yours. But not just me. You and I, we've made some friends along the way, and they need you and me just as much as you need me and them. I can make room for them. We'll be a family. You, me, Mary, her parents, all kinds of people. But here's the thing. You've treated me like a guest all this time, but I'm not a guest. My name is on your lease, and this is your final notice. Things aren't working the way you've set them up. That's why I'm here, to set things right, to finally make this place a home. For me, for you, for them, for all of us. That's it. It's high time we discuss this. Things can't stay as they are. But above all, I want you to know that I'm not leaving you. I won't, because I love you. My hands were shaking. I looked up to see Jesus peering at me. Well, what do you think? He asked, holding his breath. Do you accept my proposal? I answered before I even realized it. I do. Things haven't gone perfectly since then. I'm told that they never could, given the strange mix of people who've come along and joined us here. We all occasionally butt heads, but it's with an unconscious understanding that we're all in this together for one another. So we work it out. When you set out on your own for the first time, you don't think you'll wind up alone, eking out your existence, flailing blindly at relationship after relationship, hurting others and getting hurt as you go. That's not the dream we dream for ourselves when we're kids. But the more people I talk to, the more I realize that real life is hard to manage, and that none of us is the world's greatest manager. We settle for life as it presents itself to us. That's unacceptable to Jesus, it turns out. He wants a full life for each of us, for all of us. That's why he brought us together in this place. That's why we made him the head of the house. He's good at it. He still can't drive, though. Whenever I bring it up, he laughs and says something like, people were made to be on their feet. That's probably a conversation for another time. But for now, I can say that once upon a time, I was a lonely little girl, lost in her own life, who answered a knock at the door. And now, for all of life's complications and even occasional heartbreaks, I'm living happily